Hey again. Okay, so we're going to continue talking about the endocrine system, and so we have learned, I hope, about the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary. So now we're going to work on the anterior pituitary. Okay, technology. All right, so remember that you have the hypothalamus, that W-shaped structure in the brain, and then you have the pituitary gland that kind of comes down from there, and it's made up of two lobes, a posterior and anterior pituitary. And so we're going to focus on the anterior pituitary now. And so it originates, it's glandular material because embryologically during development it's going to be formed from kind of the roof of the mouth. So whereas the posterior pituitary looks more like brain, it's neural material, the anterior pituitary looks like glandular material because it's from the oral mucosa. It's connected to the hypothalamus through a vascular connection. So in the posterior pituitary, you have those axons, so a neural connection between the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary. With the anterior pituitary, it's a vascular connection. And it's a set of capillary beds called the hypophyseal portal system. So you have a set of capillaries, and then you have a set of capillaries in sequence. And I'll show you a picture of that so you can see what that looks like. But it's two sets of capillary beds kind of back to back. The hypothalamus controls the anterior pituitary in a different way than it controls the posterior pituitary. If you remember, in the posterior pituitary, it makes the hormones and it transports them down to the axon terminals where they're stored inside the posterior pituitary, then released. Well, the anterior pituitary connection in hypothalamus is a little different. In this case, the hypothalamus makes something called releasing and inhibiting hormones, two sets. There's releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones. So it makes these hormones. And these hormones, because they're hormones, are going to be carried into the blood, into that hypophyseal portal system, to the anterior pituitary. And they will regulate the release of hormones by the anterior pituitary. So let me kind of show you what that looks like in a schematic. So here's that posterior, so we're done with that. Here's the anterior here. So you have your hypothalamus that's going to secrete hormones that are either releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones. And there's many of these that it makes, and I'm going to give you a list of all the releasing hormones and all the inhibiting hormones made by the hypothalamus. Well, these hormones are, when the hypothalamus is stimulated, it's going to secrete these releasing and inhibiting hormones into this capillary bed here. Okay, this is that primary or first capillary bed. So this is that portal system I was talking about. So the blood's going to go in to that arteriole and go through this capillary bed. It's a capillary bed here, a capillary bed here, the second capillary bed, and then out a venule. All right, so these inhibiting and releasing hormones are put into this primary capillary plexus. The hormones then are going to travel through this portal into the anterior pituitary. So they're going to get into that anterior pituitary, and then when the anterior pituitary is stimulated, it's going to secrete its hormones into that second capillary bed. Okay, so the hypothalamus. Let me say that one more time. Make sure I've got it straight for you. I got it straight for me, but sometimes it doesn't come out like I think it should the first time. So the hypothalamus is going to secrete those hormones into that primary capillary plexus. They're going to travel through that portal system into the anterior pituitary, where they're then going to cause the anterior pituitary to secrete its own sets of hormones into that second set of capillary bed. The hormones are now in the blood, and they will then leave and go out to their target organs. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, I hope. So again, the hypothalamus is going to make a set of releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones. So releasing hormones cause stimulation of the anterior pituitary, and inhibiting hormones inhibit the anterior pituitary. So here is a list of your releasing hormones. You have corticotropin releasing hormone, known as CRH, and you have to learn these, okay? And I use the words and the letters interchangeably, so you've got to learn both. You have gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH. You have growth hormone releasing hormone, GHRH. You have thyrotropin releasing hormone, TRH, and prolactin releasing hormone, known as PRH. So what CRH does, it causes the stimulation of ACTH. It causes the anterior pituitary to release ACTH. GnRH causes the anterior pituitary to release FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone, and also LH, which is luteinizing hormone. Growth hormone and releasing hormone, or GHRH, causes the anterior pituitary to release growth hormone. TRH causes the anterior pituitary to release thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, and prolactin releasing hormone causes the anterior pituitary to release prolactin, all right, abbreviated PRL. Your inhibiting hormones are somatostatin, also known as GHIH, or growth hormone inhibiting hormone. It prevents the release of growth hormone. And then you have prolactin inhibiting hormone, which inhibits the release of prolactin. So most of your hormones released by the hypothalamus are releasing hormones that stimulate the anterior pituitary to release its own set of hormones. So all of these are going to be anterior pituitary hormones. They're going to be released in response to hypothalamic hormones being released to the capillary bed that goes to the anterior pituitary. Okay? So I've shown you this picture before, so kind of revisiting that to kind of make sure you understand this whole mechanism. It's a big feedback loop. Remember, you have your hypothalamus and you have your anterior pituitary, and so we're going to add thyroid as kind of this cascade. So you have hypothalamic hormones, and so in this case we're going to have a stimulating hormone or a releasing hormone. So the hypothalamus releases TRH. Remember, the R stands for releasing, okay? That releasing hormone will then go to the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary, in response to being stimulated by TRH, will release TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone will then travel through the blood to the thyroid gland. It will stimulate the thyroid gland to release its own set of hormones. These hormones are what actually go out to the target and do stuff. Okay? So the hypothalamic hormones act on the pituitary, the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary gland, depending on what hormone it's releasing, will go to the thyroid gland, go to the ovaries, go to the testes, lots of different glands, and then those glands will again produce more hormones. All right, this is all negative feedback. So if you have plenty of thyroid hormone in the blood, you're going to feed back and say, we don't need any more TSH. We don't need any more TRH. Okay? So this is a list of your anterior pituitary hormones, and some of these, the ones that have a star, are considered tropic hormones. And a tropic hormone is a hormone that stimulates another gland to release another hormone. So for example, TSH is tropic because it's a thyroid stimulating hormone. It stimulates the thyroid to release thyroid hormone, or T3, T4. Okay, and so we're going to talk about these tropic hormones, and as we move through the different endocrine organs. So your tropic hormones are TSH, ACTH, FSH, and LH. All right, non-tropics are prolactin, growth hormone, and melanocyte stimulating hormone, known as MSH. Okay, all of these anterior pituitary hormones, they're all proteins. Okay, they all work through a second messenger system, that cyclic AMP second messenger system, except for growth hormone. There's always an exception. Okay, so growth hormone is the only one that doesn't use a second messenger system. So now you know the name of the gland, anterior pituitary. You know the hormones that it releases. Okay, you know what type of hormones they are. You know that they're proteins, and you know generally how they work. Is it a second messenger system or not? Okay, so I'm just giving you all those little pieces of data for each hormone that you're going to have to know by the end of the semester or the end of the unit. So in this picture, what we're showing you is kind of a schematic of the hormones from the hypothalamus. So up here is hypothalamus, and this is the anterior pituitary. Okay, So the hypothalamus, because it's releasing hormones, I'm showing it being released into blood vessels because hormones go into blood vessels, all right? So the hormones that are released by the hypothalamus are your GHRH, somatostatin, which is that GHIH, the inhibiting hormone, prolactin releasing factor, inhibiting factor, TRH, CRH, and GnRH. Okay, all of those are released into the blood, into that capillary bed. That's going to travel to the anterior pituitary. All right, then the anterior pituitary is going to release hormones in response to those hypothalamic hormones. So if you have GHRH released from the hypothalamus, it will cause the anterior pituitary to release growth hormone into the blood. Growth hormone, these are your targets, will target bone, muscle, and adipose tissue. Okay, so this is not everything, not all targets. I'm just kind of giving you a schematic right now of some general targets that I want to make sure that you know. All right, prolactin, its target's going to be mammary glands. All right, so if there is a need for milk production, then the hypothalamus will release prolactin releasing factor, which will stimulate the release of prolactin from the anterior pituitary into the blood. Prolactin will travel to the breast tissue and cause the production of milk. Now remember, prolactin produces milk. Oxytocin allows it to be let down and released to a suckling baby. All right, so for your thyroid, you have to have TRH released from the hypothalamus, which will stimulate anterior pituitary to release TSH. TSH travels through the blood to its target, which is the thyroid, and the thyroid will then release thyroid hormone, or also known as T3, T4. CRH will be released from the hypothalamus, cause the release of ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, which will be released into the blood to its target. Now, I like this one. Okay, so TSH and ACTH, those are pretty cool because they kind of tell me where they're going. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. So I know its target's the thyroid because the hormone itself tells me that. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, it tells me its target too. Adreno, I know it's adrenal gland. Cortico means it's the cortical or outside region. So I know it's going to do something to that outer layer of, that's its target, the outer layer of the adrenal gland. Okay? And so it's going to target the adrenal cortex. Gonadotropin releasing hormone, that's going to cause the release of some kind of gonadotrope. And so when I say gonadotrope, I should be going, gonads. That's ovaries and testes. That's what gonad means. And so it's going to cause the release of luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. And those are going to both target the ovary in the female and the testis in the male. Okay, so this is our setup. So what we're going to be doing in some of the following videos is we're going to really talk about what does growth hormone do to these tissues, what does prolactin do to mammary tissue, what is thyroid hormone, what is it needed for, what does the adrenal cortex do, what is its function, you know, what happens when LH and FSH go to the ovary and testes, what does that cause to happen? Okay, so it's a lot of information. All right, so we're just trying to get it in as many organized ways as we can to help you learn it. All right, so the next couple of videos are going to be more specific about each one of those areas that I talked about. I'm going to talk about each one of those hormones: growth hormone, prolactin, TSH, ACTH, LH, and FSH, and really tell you what they do. Okay, so thanks again.